This is a TV show called Pagan Invasion. It was released in, I think, 1994. It was on VHS originally, and I think it aired on TV. It was a Christian fear-mongering campaign, televangelist fear-mongering campaign, to scare the daylights out of anybody that watched it. I mean, the first episode was Why Halloween and Trick or Treat Are Evil. I covered that one forever ago. If you want to see it, it's on my Telltale Unfiltered channel. Honestly, fascinating to watch. I also just covered Pagan Invasion number 9. No, I'm sorry. Pagan Invasion number 8, preview of the Antichrist. Check that one out on Unfiltered if you want to see that one too. We're about to start Pagan Invasion 7, Evolution from Physics to Metaphysics. Just from glancing at it for a minute or two, I could tell that it's basically all about evolution and how evil it is. It's bound to be fascinating. So let's give it a watch, see what they have to say for themselves. And while we do, we're going to play some Final Fantasy VII, Crystal Ball, man with a mask. Oh my god, what monsters, right? This whole section is like singing wow, look, people dancing around a fire. How horrific. Who would dance around a fire? Who would stand out in the open in a black dress? The monsters, right? The Gaul. This is supposed to be like a Clockwork Orange thing, I think. Gravestones. Oh, the Illuminati symbol. People tied to a tree? I don't... Statue of Liberty lady, Halloween masks, Illuminati symbol. Actually, that's the all-seeing eye that's on the back of the dollar bill. That's not the Illuminati symbol. That symbol was actually it was created in the Middle Ages, I believe, and it was supposed to represent the Holy Trinity. It was a Christian symbol for, ever. Evolution from physics to metaphysics. Yeah, it's just anti-evolution nonsense.
Hello, I'm Chuck Smith.
And I'm Carol Matriciana. Welcome to this edition of the Pagan Invasion.
For nearly a century and a half, evolutionary thinking has made tremendous inroads into the hearts and minds of our scientific community. This is ironic, considering the fact that science defines itself as the ability to observe and test things. Yet no one has ever observed evolution taking place.
That's complete nonsense. Even at the time, that was a lie. We have most definitely observed directly evolution taking place.
And there is no conceivable way in which evolution can be tested.
That's complete garbage. Now, I know logically it doesn't really, it's hard to wrap your mind around that you can directly observe evolution taking place, but here's the thing about evolution. It comes in components, okay? The first one is gene mutation. The second one is duplication. The third one is natural selection. Or selection in general, not just natural selection. Natural selection, genetic hitchhiking, genetic drift, gene flow, mutation bias. Anyways, there are a number of different kind of pillars to evolution. You start with a set of genes, and genes are capable of duplicating themselves, completely copying, just total copies that are basically benign in every other way. They have no other effect because the gene that does that thing already exists within the body. As you reproduce, a process known as gene mutation takes place, where genes change ever so slightly. Now, sometimes the gene that changes is one that cannot change, that absolutely shouldn't, that will be devastating and damaging if it changes. And in that event, the individual or the creature or whatever that has that mutation that's deeply damaging dies, and the line doesn't continue on from that specific individual. Sometimes those gene mutations are incredibly beneficial. on occasion, they're extremely beneficial. And if that's the case, the creature with the gene mutation will flourish and reproduce more and have more offspring that have the gene mutation also. That's the idea behind natural selection and sexual selection. There are a number of different selections. Now, that's hard to see on a short time scale, right? Like, that's hard to observe for us, obviously, because we only live for one generation, human beings do, right? How can we observe such a thing? As it turns out, there are creatures out there that have extremely short life cycles. I'm talking 3-hour life cycles. They're born, they reproduce, they die within 3 hours. For example, E. coli, I believe. E. coli bacteria has life cycles that short. And as a result, we can watch them reproduce and mutate and grow and evolve. Within the span of 30 years, we can see a full evolutionary process take place in E. coli. And we have. This has been proven without a shadow of a doubt. Evolution is, in fact, real. Whether this guy wants to admit that or not, whether he is aware of it or not, is irrelevant. It's a fact. Now, I saw some Jehovah's Witness propaganda the other day where they said that evolution is propaganda. They were framing it up as though the term evolution is a fact is a piece of propaganda. It's a mantra that people repeat and so on and so forth, and you're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to push back on it or any of that. That's complete nonsense. I'm sitting here listening to people push back on it. I have no objections to people voicing their stupid opinions, but they better be aware that I'm going to wreck those opinions when I get an opportunity.
And as we have learned from a previous program, no hard evidence exists in the fossil record, or anywhere for that matter, to prove that evolution has ever occurred.
That's simply false. We have tons of evidence about evolution. We don't need the fossil record to prove that evolution took place. In fact, we would not look to the fossil record to prove that evolution took place, probably. I mean, sure, we can see some level of evidence, but it's just a process that's well understood and documented at this point. We understand it completely.
Still, the idea that non-living chemicals changed into life and that one life form can change itself into another life form continues to be presented to the public as proven scientific fact.
It is proven scientific fact.
To promote evolution as strictly science is especially deceiving when one considers its religious roots.
Religious roots. Okay, here's the thing about these people and about evolution. There's this document called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Okay, I've talked about it a few times, so let me just insert a clip here that explains what it is so you have the same background as me. If you've already seen this, then skip to this timestamp right here to go to the end of this clip, and then we'll continue. In 1902, newspapers in Tsarist Russia start publishing this document called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. They came up with, I don't know, like 15 or 18 of them, or I don't remember exactly how many. They claimed that they found these documents on dead Jewish soldiers, and they were like articles that describe how the Jews were going to like accomplish world domination. Now, this is completely made up. It was anti-Semitic propaganda, obviously. There was no dead Jewish soldier. There were no elders of Zion. It was all completely fabricated from the ground up. But it was used to demonize a minority group within the country. And if there's one thing we've learned over the past couple of years even, it's that fascists and extremists love to blame all of their problems on minorities. Hitler, when he eventually came around, even reprinted copies of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and wrote about it in Mein Kampf, like talked about how the Jews are trying to take over and all this other stuff. But in 1923, about 20 years after it came out, it was discovered that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was actually plagiarized, full-blown, copied and pasted, or I guess the writing version of copied and pasted, the early 1900s version of copy and paste, straight from an 1854 satire book, a French satire book that didn't even mention Jews. It was just straight up plagiarized. 80% of it was plagiarized from this 1854 book, thus putting the final nail in the coffin, proving that this was completely forged. It was fake. It was just propagandistic bullshit created by, anti-Semites to destroy the Jewish community. So that is what the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is. This is actually a copy of it right here. Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It was compiled into a book in 1905 called Protocols of the Meetings of the Learned Elders of Zion. A little bit longer, but yeah, it's all fake. It was all completely faked. I'm not exactly sure how many protocols there are. 10 at least. There may be more than that. Well, anyway, protocols includes things like, just listen to like one or two lines here. In miserable Russia, the Jews are less than 5% of the population, yet they hold over 90% of the official positions. Russians and Jews are very much different, yet Russia is governed by a mere handful of unprincipled Jews. The 95% of Russians have only a 10% say-so about their own government, and even the 10% in office are but lickspittle, or fronts, to the domineering Jews. To the reasoning mind, such a condition of affairs seems impossible, yet the condition exists. In fact, a careful study to the protocols alone will clear up the mystery. Now that you've read that one sentence from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a book supposedly discovered on a dead Jewish soldier, written by Jews in power, listen to what this televangelist Lance Wallnau says. He's about to explain Seven Mountains Dominionism, or the Seven Mountains Mandate, which is the televangelist's plan to take control of the country. I'm not joking. This is from early March 2022.
3% of the population, roughly 3 to 4% of the population, are radical leftist elites. 30% of the population are evangelical born-again Christians that are inclined to go towards Pentecostal language. I mean, we're really out there. 30% against 3%, but they neutralize the church because they're also in religion. They changed the definition of marriage, so they've taken over family. They've totally taken over academia, so the education institutions are teaching leftist theology or leftist ideology and silencing conservatives. They're controlling government right now. They've taken over legacy media, Hollywood, entertainment, and arts, and now they've got Wall Street.
These are the 7 mountains, the 7 areas of society that they want to take over to control society in a Christian nationalist state, is what he's describing right now. This came straight out of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, directly lifted from it. Did Lance Wallnau lift it? I don't know. Somebody did and provided this information to him, and he started repeating it. Somebody lifted it directly from Protocols.
This is 3%. 30% of the population is Christian. How is it that 30% are dominated by 3%? They have a worldview for bringing their kingdom here now.
I'm dead serious. This came straight from Protocols. Jews are less than 5% of the population, yet hold over 90% of the official positions. Russians and Jews are very much different, yet Russia's governed by a mere handful of unprincipled Jews. I mean, you're seeing the similarities, right? There are other similarities. I can't find it at this moment, but there's another part that talks about Jews attempting to spread Darwinism and Marxism through society because they're wonderfully destructive ideologies. They're trying to spread them through society to destroy society. Does this sound familiar? Darwinism, Marxism, saying that they destroy society. The leftists are setting out to destroy it. Seriously. Word for word, the tactics being used on the right at the moment. That's what Protocols of Elders of Zion is. That's what it's all about. That's where a lot of televangelists are getting their ideas from. Directly, I don't know. Setting out to deceive, I don't know. Are they even aware of this document? I have no idea. But it's copied word for word in some situations, and it's uncanny. Oh, here's another one. The idea that Jews eat babies, or that the elites drink adrenochrome from children. That's straight from Protocols of the Elders of Zion. QAnon is nothing more than a rebranded Nazi death cult. Every conspiracy theory you can come up with came from this document. The Great Reset, QAnon, there are a billion of them out there that came from this. Thanks, past me. So, as you can see, Protocols of the Elders of Zion used Darwinism against people. One of the things that you find in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a claim that they were going to try to use Darwinism as a weapon against people because it's a quote-unquote delightfully destructive ideology. Anti-evolution sentiment and anti-Semitism and anti-intellectualism have gone hand in hand since the dawn of time, practically. It's absolutely absurd.
Evolutionary thinking has been around for thousands of years, and it forms the basis of many of the world's pagan religions.
Forms the basis for many of the world's pagan religions. Wow, okay.
While Charles Darwin is often referred to as the founder of scientific evolution, he himself was actually a theologian, having been trained in England's Cambridge University, not in science, but in theology.
So, what does that have to do with anything? Is that even true? Don't trust a word out of their mouths automatically, but even if it were true. So? Who cares? Seriously.
Darwin was also a high-degree Freemason whose religious belief was in direct opposition to biblical creation.
Again, who cares if he was a Freemason or not? Honestly, what does this have to do with anything? You know why this matters to them? Because they can't, I'm talking these people on screen, televangelists and evangelicals in general, can't grasp the concept of not worshiping some leader. Darwin isn't some special guy, some leader that I look to for, for religious or moral guidance or whatever. He's just somebody who came up with an idea that happened to be correct. Fantastic. That's all I need.
John Dewey, along with other signers of 1933's Humanist Manifesto, were, by their own admission, members of a religious movement which they called humanism. Their militant goal was to get their religious beliefs...
Oh, it's militant now. They're militants. They have an interest in doing things violently, accomplishing their goals through violence. Okay, she didn't mention that at first. Is that true? She's obviously trying to conflate modern-day humanism, modern-day secular humanism or atheism, with what it was at one point. If it was even this at the time. She says it's militant. Is that even true? Probably not.
In evolution, placed in science courses, and indeed all courses throughout America's public school systems. Today, many leading evolutionists do recognize the basic religious attributes of evolution and concede that their belief in it is, in essence, a religious one.
Wait, what was that? Let me listen again.
Evolutionists do recognize the...
Evolutionists recognize that it's basically a religion? Like, even evolutionists recognize it? What? This is so ridiculous, dude. All the way to the bottom. This is crazy.
Harrison Matthews writes that a belief in the theory of evolution is exactly parallel to a belief in special creation, with evolution merely a satisfactory faith on which to base our interpretation of nature.
Who the hell is this? L. Harrison Matthews? I don't know if this is who they're talking about for sure, but I assume it is. He's born 1901 and died 1986. This video came out in 1994. I can't tell if this is who they're talking. Who the hell is L. Harrison Matthews? And why should I care? I don't know. Leonard Harrison Matthews seems to be the guy, apparently, but I don't know if this quote is even attributable to him. Is this real? Like, I've already heard these people blatantly lie.
Physicist H.S. Lipson states, evolution became, in a sense, a scientific religion. Almost all scientists have accepted it, and many are prepared to bend their observations to fit in with it. Dr. Colin Patterson, senior paleontologist of the British Museum of Natural History, and who was, by all accounts, one of the world's leading evolutionists, goes so far as to say that evolution is positively anti-knowledge.
Positively anti-knowledge. Okay, well, you're going to have to get, back that up somehow. Tell me how exactly.
With today's cry sounding even louder for separation of church and state, we have to ask why one religious thought, evolution, is being advanced with our tax dollar in the public schools and museums.
Dude, this is sounding exactly like Kent Hovind. He says the exact same stuff, word for word. This is uncanny. Did they get this from Hovind?
While the other perspective, special creation, is being censored.
Because one is scientific and one is not. One is easily provable through logic and facts, and the other is not. That's why. It's not censorship, okay? You are wrong on everything. If you were correct, it would be taught in schools.
In the year...
See, this is a perfect example of propaganda right here. This is how propaganda works. Twist things around until they're unrecognizable anymore. This is pro-creationist, pro-evangelical propaganda.
1925, schoolteacher John Scopes was on trial for presenting evolution as science. Scopes was eventually found guilty, but not before a dangerous precedent was established.
Oh, I remember that Scopes trial. I feel like that's... I think Kent Hovind's talked about that before. I don't remember the outcome. I don't remember what the trial was over. I mean, we've already heard them lie a billion times. Don't trust a word out of their mouths. But, yeah, that was actually a pretty influential or pretty significant trial in the history of, like, creationism in the United States or whatever.
For the first time in a U.S. court of law, the existence of a creator God was challenged.
Look, you can believe in evolution and in God simultaneously. There's really nothing wrong with that. Feel free. If you have to back God into a corner, start out from the position that he created everything, and then you kind of back off and say, well, maybe he just, like, kicked it all into being and then walked away or whatever. If you have to back out, like, back into a corner like that, then maybe there's really no reason to believe in it in the first place, but it is possible to believe in God and evolution simultaneously. Just think that that's the process God used to, bring everything into being in the first place. That's fine. I have no problem with any of that. These people want it all. They don't just want to have Christians who accept evolution as the fact that it is. They want to force other Christians to reject scientific fact. It's honestly embarrassing. I mean, think about this, okay? There's a point in time in U.S. history, not even that long ago, where black people were drinking from different water fountains, from blacks-only water fountains, right? And now in human history in the United States, that would be unthinkable. It would be horrific and wrong to imagine something like that happening. People would be disgusted. They would be outraged. They'd be up in arms over that, right? That's because a sufficient amount of time passed with the culture moving in a very specific direction that it's unacceptable to even imagine at this point. Evolution has won the cultural battle. Evolution honestly won the cultural battle all the way back then. Yes, there are some poor fools who still believe that, like, creationism is the way and that, evolution is fake and all that other stuff. But by and large, it's won the cultural battle. And there's really no hope of young earth creationism regaining a foothold. They are losing the cultural battle. With that knowledge in mind, it's pretty interesting, in my opinion, to watch them flail around wildly, trying to regain that foothold that they simply will never regain.
In July of 1925, the trial of the century took place in Dayton, Tennessee. For the first time in educational history in this land, the concept of a creator was totally challenged. This was the great...
Dude, I don't even remember what the Scopes monkey trial was all about. I think that's what it's called, Scopes monkey trial. For some reason, that's on the tip of my tongue, that phrase. Let's look that up real quick, just so that we have some knowledge, some background knowledge on what this means and what it is and all that other stuff. The Scopes trial, formerly the State of Tennessee v. John Thomas Scopes, and commonly referred to as the Scopes Monkey Trial, was an American legal case from July 10th to 21st, 1925, in which a high school teacher, John T. Scopes, was accused of violating Tennessee's Butler Act, which made it illegal for teachers to teach human evolution in any state-funded school. The trial was deliberately staged in order to attract publicity to the small town of Dayton, Tennessee, where it was held. Scopes was unsure whether he had ever actually taught evolution, but he incriminated himself deliberately so the case would have a defendant. Scopes was found guilty and was fined $100, the equivalent to $1,500 in 2021, but the verdict was overturned on a technicality. The trial served its purpose of drawing intense national publicity as national reporters flocked to Dayton to cover the high-profile lawyers who had agreed to represent each side. William Jennings Bryan, three-time presidential candidate and former Secretary of State, argued for the prosecution, while Clarence Darrow served as the defense attorney for Scopes. The trial publicized the fundamentalist modernist controversy, which set modernists who said evolution was not inconsistent with religion against fundamentalists who said the Word of God was revealed in the Bible and it took priority over all human knowledge. The case was thus seen both as a theological contest and as a trial on whether evolution should be taught in schools. Fascinating. Okay. I'm looking for like the key parts here. Okay, I guess it was appealed to the Supreme Court of Tennessee. Scopes' lawyers appealed, challenging the conviction on several grounds. First, they argued the statute was overly vague because it prohibited the teaching of evolution, a very broad term. The court rejected that argument, holding that evolution, like prohibition, is a broad term. In recent bickering, however, evolution has been understood to mean the theory which holds that man has developed from some pre-existing lower type. This is the popular significance of evolution, just as the popular significance of prohibition is prohibition of the traffic in intoxicating liquors. It was in that sense that evolution was used in this act. That's fair enough. I agree. Lawyers argued that the statute violated his constitutional right to free speech because it prohibited him from teaching evolution. I would reject that too. Teachers have a duty to teach within the confines of the curriculum. Otherwise, we'd have people teaching all kinds of crazy stuff in schools. The court rejected this argument, holding the state was permitted to regulate his speech as an employee of the state. Third, it was argued that the terms of the Butler Act violated the Tennessee state constitution, which provided that it shall be the duty of the General Assembly in all future periods of this government to cherish literature and science. The argument was that the theory of the descent of man from a lower order of animals was now established by the preponderance of scientific thought, and that the prohibition of the teaching of such a theory was a violation of the legislative duty to cherish science. The court rejected this argument, holding that the determination of what laws cherished science was an issue for the legislature, not the judiciary. Okay, interesting. They argued that the statute violated the provisions of the Constitution that prohibited the establishment of a state religion. That's a good argument. The religious preference provisions of the Tennessee Constitution stated, "No preference shall ever be given by law to any religious establishment or mode of worship." Writing for the court 2 sittings and 1 year after receiving the appeal, Chief Justice Grafton Green rejected this argument, holding that Tennessee Religious Preference Clause was designed to prevent the establishment of a state religion, as had been the experience in England and Scotland at the writing of the Constitution. Yeah, that's an argument that a lot of Christians give. It's simply invalid, because if you give religious preference over, something else, that's basically what you're doing, establishing a state religion. That's why the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, says Congress shall make no law establishing a religion or regulating religion or whatever other thing. But that applies to more than just creating a state religion. By giving favor to one, you are effectively creating a state religion. Okay, here's the aftermath. Creation versus evolution debate. The trial revealed a growing chasm in American Christianity in 2 ways of finding truth. One biblical, one evolutionist. Author David Getz writes that the majority of Christians denounced evolution at the time. Author Mark Edwards contests the conventional view that in the wake of the Scopes trial, a humiliated fundamentalism retreated into the political and cultural background, a viewpoint which is evidenced in the film Inherit the Wind, 1960, as well as the majority of contemporary historical accounts. Rather, the cause of fundamentalism's retreat was the death of its leader, Bryan. Most fundamentalists saw the trial as a victory rather than a defeat, but Bryan's death soon after created a leadership void that no other fundamentalist leader could fill. Bryan, unlike other leaders, brought name recognition, respectability, and the ability to forge a broad-based coalition of fundamentalist and mainline religious groups. Okay. Interesting. Ultimately, either way, it was discovered or decided that evolution is a fact. It was discovered that evolution is a fact, and it was decided to teach it in schools because it's a scientific fact. That's just what it is. Anyways, yeah, let's keep listening to these nutter butters and see what else they have to say about the Scopes monkey trial. The point is, the evolution side won in the courtroom on a technicality eventually. It should have flat out won on the facts alone, but at least it won on the technicality. What was the technicality that it won on again? The jury should have decided the fine, not the judge, since under the state constitution, Tennessee judges could not at that time set fines above $50, and the Butler Act specified a minimum fine of $100. That was the technicality. So it was because the judge decided the fine rather than the jury. That's a piss poor technicality.
In educational history in this land, the concept of a creator was totally challenged. This was the great turning point. Up till 1925, all of your science classes taught creation. Today, all that you have taught in the science classroom is evolutionism.
John Scopes, a schoolteacher, was found guilty of violating Tennessee law, which prohibited the teaching of human evolution.
Again, the dude apparently didn't even know if he had ever taught evolution, but, you know, he came up with a pretext to allow the trial to move forward because that's what they wanted. In reality, this sounds a little dirty and underhanded, but this is actually exactly what happens in activist circles on a regular basis. In the Rosa Parks case, there was a woman who that exact situation happened to. If you don't know Rosa Parks, she's the woman who she's the black woman during a time of segregation who was sitting on a bus, a city bus, and refused to get up and move for white passengers. She's supposed to go to the back of the bus, and she refused to go to the back of the bus, and they put her in jail for it. As it turns out, that was largely kind of a staged situation. There was another woman that happened to just like a month before or something like that. But she was an unwed mother, and they recognized that it looked, you know, they recognized that conservatives were going to shred her character. They're going to plaster her all over the news and claim that she's worthless and all that other garbage. So instead of using that person who actually legitimately experienced this through no fault of her own, they put Rosa Parks on that bus to basically reenact the exact situation so that the people involved would do exactly what they had always done, which was tell her to go to the back of the bus. She would refuse. She would go to jail. So in a technical sense, I guess you could say that the Rosa Parks situation was staged, but this is a problem that had existed for a long time, that had been happening so consistently that they knew that if Rosa Parks got on this bus and did this thing, it was going to happen. Her rights were still violated, whether it was set up or not. Her rights were still violated. And by doing that, by staging that situation, by setting that situation up, she opened it up so other people don't have to experience that type of thing. So activists do stage events like that all the time. That's actually really common. I don't really have a problem with that exactly. I'm really okay with it.
Less than 10 years later, by 1933, the Humanist Manifesto was signed by a small but powerful group of people presenting themselves as a non-profit religion. Their religion was humanism, and it swept through the educational system.
Okay, wait a minute now. Did they say that they are a non-profit, or did they say that they're a non-profit religion? Because non-profits are not necessarily religions by default. I would be willing to bet anything that they said that they're a non-profit. But they're going to make up all kinds of nonsense and come up with excuses to demonize humanism or atheism or whatever, turn it into an enemy, and claim that it's basically exactly the same as Christianity in every way, and they're trying to push it on children. Just complete nonsense.
Through the zealous pursuits of John Dewey, a socialist and first president of the American Humanist Association.
Now, I know calling him a socialist doesn't really mean much to you today, but at that time, that was a big fucking deal. There's a period in time called McCarthyism. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. In case you haven't, let me just give you an idea of what McCarthyism is real quick, a basic idea. McCarthyism is the practice of making false or unfounded accusations of subversion and treason, especially when related to anarchism, communism, and socialism, and especially when done in a public and attention-grabbing manner. The term originally referred to the controversial practices and policies of U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy and covers a period of the late 1940s through the 50s. It was characterized by heightened political repression and persecution of left-wing individuals and a campaign spreading fear of alleged communist and socialist influence on American institutions and of espionage by Soviet agents. After the mid-50s, McCarthyism began to decline, mainly due to Joseph McCarthy's gradual loss of public popularity and credibility, after several of his accusations were found to be false, and sustained opposition from the U.S. Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, on human rights grounds. So basically, this guy was going around accusing people of being communists or having like communist sympathies or socialism or whatever, and he was throwing them in jail or persecuting them. I'm dead serious. Like, he really mistreated them. This is all from the Red Scare is what they called it, right? So anyways, yeah, McCarthyism was a horrific, ugly blight on U.S. society. But there are, you know, some people who enjoy that, who like it, who wanted more of it. Like, for example, the people we're listening to right now. They use socialist and communist as slurs to attack the people around them, to slander them, to make them look like they are treasonous enemies of the state and don't deserve to exist in the same space as everybody else, basically. Pure unadulterated hatred. Seriously. Disgusting. That drilling is too much, man. I wish they would stop that shit. It's very fucking annoying. If there was anything that I could do to stop this, I would have done it already. Unfortunately, there's not. There's some woman that lives in the same building as me who has, like, a 6-month-old baby who cannot sleep, can't take naps because this shit's going on constantly, and it's so fucking loud. Seriously, it makes your head vibrate. It's so fucking loud. Right outside your window. It's insane. Anyways. All right, let's keep listening.
Today, public schools are the seminaries for Dewey's religion of humanism, and its doctrine of evolution dominates the educational system.
Now, today we do have religion being taught in our public schools. The fundamental tenet of humanism, for instance, as listed right in the Humanist Manifesto, tenet number 1, religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing, it was not created. Tenet number 2, man is the product of a long natural process, that is, evolution.
Okay, hold on. What was tenet number 1 again? Regard the universe as self-existing and not created. The answer really is, I don't know. That's the only answer that you should have to give to these questions. I don't know. Making something up is not benefiting anybody.
Universe as self-existing, it was not created. Tenet number 2, man is the product of a long natural process, that is, evolution.
That does not exclude God from the equation. You can believe in God and also accept evolution as the fact that it is. By the by, evolution is not something you believe. You don't believe in evolution. You believe in religious things. You believe in stuff that are not provable. Evolution is a fact that you either accept as the fact that it is or you reject.
A very few people originally got control of our education system in this land. One of the things that was imperative for them to push through their programs was evolutionism. Most people.
Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Do you guys remember the Protocols of the Elders of Zion that I mentioned earlier? Do you remember from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion that section about, the small percentage at the top controlling everybody and everything? This is straight from the playbook of, Protocols of the Elders of Zion trying to accomplish world domination or whatever. Everything that they're saying right now. Insane.
People do not believe that evolution happened. The fact that most scientists do, or practically all scientists do, is in a sense neither here nor there, because in fact we would like the ideas to get across to our students.
The thing that...
What? What was that? It doesn't matter if scientists accept evolution, because we would like... What? We'd like to get the ideas across to our students? Listen again. What was that? And who the hell is this? Dr. Vincent Sarich, professor of anthropology? Who the fuck is this guy? Professor emeritus in anthropology at University of California, Berkeley, apparently. I'm not sure who this is or... Okay, apparently some of his teachings were criticized by students and faculty who argued they believed they were not based in science, and his critics said some of his statements were demeaning to women, non-whites, and homosexuals. Other students defended him against these charges, however, and defended his teaching. Wow. Apparently, this is from a New York Times article in 2015. That's nuts, dude. That is absolutely nuts. Okay, so that's who we're dealing with, I guess. Now we know, right?
In fact, we would like the ideas to get across to our students.
The thing that the average Christian in America...
I don't understand what he just said. Like, literally nothing that he just said made any sense at all. I really want to just step back, listen to it in its entirety, and really try to understand what he's trying to communicate, okay? Let's try this again.
Evolution happened. The fact that most scientists do, or practically all scientists do, is in a sense neither here nor there, because in fact we would like the ideas to get across to our students.
I don't understand. What's he trying to communicate? I am so fucking lost right now. It doesn't matter if scientists accept evolution or not, because we would like the ideas to get across to our students. What? Did that sentence make any sense? That's a brand new sentence if I've ever heard one, right?
The thing that the average Christian in America has never realized is that his tax dollars pay the school teacher's salary, they pay for the textbooks, and yet most parents still will not say one word about anything that happens in that classroom that disturbs them. For parents to allow a godless indoctrination in evolutionism is just unthinkable.
Complete nonsense. This is pure, unadulterated propaganda. This is not happening.
Thousands of children are bused daily to our museums.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase. This is not happening as in evolution is being taught in schools. It's not indoctrination.
Museums as part of school-sponsored field trips where they're given crash courses in evolution. And just like in the Soviet Union, this religion of atheism is presented as fact, with no alternate viewpoints allowed to be expressed.
Did you catch that again? Another reference to the Soviet Union, just like McCarthyism. Remember? McCarthyism is this deep evil that exists in the world, people trying to turn your children into atheists and evolutionists and communists. It's all a plot by these evil people out to get you. Nonsense.
Attorney Wendell Bird argued the case for balanced treatment of creation science and evolution before the U.S. Supreme Court.
That would be fantastic. I would love that if evolution and creation were taught equally. If they held equal weight, if they were equally as possible, if one was just as true as the other, that's not the case. Okay, evolution's been proven unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, as provably true. And if you don't accept that, you just haven't looked at the facts. Just look at the facts. Just listen to what I had to say this morning, or just listen to what I had to say earlier, where I explained the steps that take place for evolution to occur. It's really straightforward. It's not complicated at all, honestly. I mean, well, it's very complicated, but it's not too complicated to understand for a layman.
He is author of the book, The Origin of Species Revisited.
To me, the basic issue is academic freedom, because no one's trying to exclude evolution from public schools while teaching a theory of creation. Instead, the evolutionists are trying to exclude alternatives, while, in general, defending the exclusive teaching of evolution.
Dude, is this guy opposed to teaching evolution or something? Is he like a creationist or what? This is bizarre to listen to, dude. What the hell is happening right now?
I think creationism should be taught in schools simply because all good ideas should be taught in schools.
Yeah, but creationism's not a good idea, and it's also not factual. If it's factual, if it's informational, sure, teach it in schools. It's not.
I think we shouldn't be afraid of ideas, whether we oppose them or whether we're...
No one's afraid of ideas. Take it to the marketplace of ideas, the town square. That's perfectly fine. Not to schools. You go to school to learn facts and information, not bullshit.
We're for them. I think we should expose everyone to both sides of the issue.
86% of the American public believes that the theory of evolution ought to be taught along with the scientific theory of creation.
Yeah, I don't really care. They're incorrect on that point. And is that fact even true? Was it then? I don't think it was accurate even at the time. It's certainly not accurate now.
According to an AP NBC News nationwide poll.
I think creation should be taught in schools because it's a part of what we are, and I think it should be taught with an open...
Oh, interesting. Usually when I look for things to teach in school, I look for things that are factual, not things that make me feel good. You know, facts over feelings and all that stuff.
Open mind is without religious intonations.
Lawyers nationwide, more than 2 to 1, agree that it is constitutional to teach the theory of creation along with the theory of evolution.
Yeah, except the theory of creation is not a theory, okay? A theory is a robust, complex framework that is used to describe a set of facts. That fucking drilling again is getting really loud. Like they're really leaning into it up there. So a lot of people don't really understand like the difference between a hypothesis, a law, and a theory. A hypothesis, when you come up with something, you got a question, you don't know what's happening or how to explain it, right? You throw ideas out there, anything and everything, and you start testing those ideas, okay? The ideas that you toss out there to try to explain this phenomenon that you're experiencing, those are hypotheses. You gather all the facts together and you come up with a number of possible explanations for why this is happening. Once you narrow down the facts and the hypotheses and everything else, you will narrow it down to the facts. You'll narrow it down to a single framework that could possibly be the explanation. And when you have completely formed this framework out into something that you are 100% sure of, no doubt in your mind that this is exactly how it works, like the theory of relativity, the germ theory of disease, when you narrow it down to that, then it can qualify as a theory. And when it's a theory with inarguable facts backing it up, you can derive laws from it, like the law of gravity, for example. That's how the scientific process works. Theory is like the ultimate graduation point for anything. A theory means it is so completely 100% factual that it will never go away. Now, parts of the theory might be modified over time, might be corrected or changed or tweaked a little bit, but that theory is there to stay. That's just how the scientific method works. Creationism is not a theory. It's barely a hypothesis. It's barely an idea that somebody tossed out. It has not been proven to any degree. Now, it could be argued that, oh my God, what's it called? Irreducible complexity. That's what I was looking for. Now, it could be argued that irreducible complexity is a theory, but it's not, really. It's a slightly more formed out hypothesis still. And that's been settled in court.
And lawyers better than 2 to 1 believe that both should be taught in public schools.
Yes, creation should be taught in schools. Equal time should be given to evolution and creation.
Like, who are these people, and why do we care what they have to say anyways?
42.3% of biology teachers believe in teaching a theory of creation along with the theory of evolution.
Really? 42% of biology teachers at the time. I'm sorry, I simply don't believe you.
And the same is true of school board members, 2/3, according to a poll by the American School Board Journal.
If that were true, then it would be taught. Aren't the school board members at least partly the people who decide what's in the curriculum in the first place? This sounds like complete BS to me. And who is this guy, anyways?
The fact is that contrary to all of the smoke, the great majority of the American public feels that it is unfair to teach just the theory of evolution.
No more than 6% have ever wanted only evolutionism taught, but...
That's complete nonsense. Like, literally all of it is complete garbage. And I don't care what other people want. School is to learn facts. That's why kids go to school, to learn facts and information. I don't care how many people don't want kids learning about evolution. It could be 99.9%. If it's a fact, then it should be taught in schools, period.
There is such total domination and control in the scientific community that we still are placating the 6% of the people in this land who believe there is no God and believe that the universe created itself.
Once again, this goes back to the old protocols of the Elders of Zion. Oh my God, dude, there's a fucking truck out there honking now. Once again, this goes back to the old protocols of the Elders of Zion trope.
Well, since there's no one answer and you can't prove...
3% of the population controls 90% of the country or whatever.
...prove the past yet, then both ideas should be taught.
The only fair approach is to let the children hear all of the scientific information.
Yeah, absolutely. Let them hear all the scientific information. I like that.
And make up their own minds.
The founding fathers of evolution based their theories not on scientific evidence, but simply on wishful thinking. The goal was to disprove the existence of God.
Okay, is that even true? I doubt it. Even if it were, I don't care. I don't care what the quote-unquote founders of evolution had to say about anything. They were wrong about so much shit. Do you know that Freud was wrong about almost every single thing that he had to say? Sigmund Freud got nearly everything wrong, but he legitimized the field of psychology and turned it into a real science that's really studied in universities today. And it is a legitimate science. So I really don't care what Freud had to say. I don't care what Darwin had to say. I don't care about any of them. They had some things to contribute to the movement, and they successfully contributed to it.
The lack of evidence is something which has haunted evolution's devotees ever since, yet
Simply false. There's so much evidence for evolution, it's ridiculous. Even in 1925, there was an overwhelming amount of evidence. Like, that's why it was being taught in schools in the first place, to any degree at all. Just completely made up.
incredibly hasn't diminished its promotion. Roger Oakland, who co-authored the book The Evolution Conspiracy with me, is a former evolutionist himself.
Oh my God, The Evolution Conspiracy. I love it. Holy shit. I should get a copy of this book. That sounds interesting.
And biology teacher. Recently...
Wait, I gotta look this up now. Hold on, let me find it. It was 25 years ago the first edition of blah 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 was published. You can't even display the table of contents? What the hell is with this sample? It's terrible. Satan's most lethal weapon. Shattered marriages, sexual promiscuity, abortion, human trafficking, homosexual marriage, crime, terrorism, youth in rebellion. What is happening to our world and why? It may astonish you, but belief in the evolution of life is the source of much of our present society's confusion and waning morality. Evolutionism in all its forms has become so... I lost my place. Has become so firmly entrenched that it now tears at the very fabric of our moral structure. Wow, that sounds intense. How do the Big Bang Theory and other conjectures of evolutionary thinking, Big Bang and evolution have nothing to do with each other, contribute to the devastating condition of our society? What is the connection between evolutionary concepts and the state of our moral, spiritual, and physical health? So yeah, that's her book, apparently. I had no idea she'd written a book, but okay. Complete nonsense, man. Let me know what you think about this in the comments.